Good morning. I hope everybody's well. We're going to be continuing with our astronomy lessons. This is going to be Space Exploration, Chapter 9. And our vocabulary would be module, which is a noun. It's a segment or section of a spacecraft designed to do a specific job. Observatory is a noun. A building or place especially built for observing the stars, planets, and other space objects. Probes, nouns, unmanned spacecraft sent to explore space and gather scientific information. Reusable, able to be used again. It's an adjective. Spacecraft, a noun, a manned or unmanned vehicle designed to travel into space for research and exploration. Space shuttle, a partly reusable manned spacecraft launched into space for research and exploration that returns to Earth and lands on a runway. Triumph, a special achievement, success, accomplishment, or victory. So, what have we already learned? Last time we learned about Copernicus and the heliocentric view of our solar system. It was radical. It it blew people's minds. What do we know about him? Well, he was Polish, an astronomer, a clergyman. He said that the Earth moved in space. He proposed the heliocentric idea that the sun, not the Earth, was the center of the solar system. He opposed the geocentric view that said the Earth was the center of the universe. How was he able to come up with those conclusions? Well, he studied the movement of the planets. He studied the night sky. He used his mind and his logical thinking. He did mathematical calculations, and he studied Aristarchus's ideas. Remember, Copernicus made all of his observations before there was ever a telescope. Galileo used a telescope to learn more about the solar system and gathered further evidence that Earth was not the center of the universe. We have discovered other things with the use of telescopes, like galaxies are moving away from one another, stars are different colors, there are different shapes of galaxies. But telescopes are only one way that astronomers learn about the universe. Another way is through space exploration. And there are various kinds of spacecraft to explore space in different ways. A spacecraft is both the singular and plural form used to describe vessels that are sent into space. There can be one spacecraft or many spacecraft. Also, remember the definition of the word astronaut. An astronaut is a person who is trained for space flight. Astro should sound pretty familiar. Astro means star. And what do you think not might mean in this case? In stars and constellations, you heard that we navigate. Not is from the same root as navigate, and it means having to do with navigation. So an astronaut would be a space navigator. Excuse me. It's spring. Just think, Copernicus, with the help of other scientists before and after him, changed our understandings of astronomy when he discovered that the universe was not geocentric. Geocentric, remember, means geo has to do with the earth and centric has to do with the center. Copernicus opened our eyes and minds to a whole different way of thinking about the universe. How were just a handful of people able to come up with an idea that changed the whole world? It's quite simple, really. Copernicus began by studying something he was really interested in, the night sky. His interest led him to make careful observations, to ask questions, to work hard, to study, to think logically, to come up with new answers, and to build upon the work of other scientists before him. His willingness to ask questions even when he had to stand alone with his ideas, led Copernicus to make an important scientific discovery that our solar system is heliocentric or sun centered. All of science is based upon careful observations of the world and a willingness to ask questions about it. Asking questions allows us to come up with new ideas, and new ideas lead to a better understanding about how the world works. That's what the process of science is all about. So, whenever you observe the world around you and ask questions about what you see, you should be proud of yourself because you're beginning to think like a scientist. Not too many years after Copernicus died, the telescope was invented. As you heard in previous read aloud, Galileo was one of the first astronomers to build and use a telescope. Very soon, many astronomers began using telescopes to take a closer look at the stars. This gave them new information. And so astronomers were able to learn even more about the universe and gather more evidence that supported Copernicus's heliocentric theory. As you heard earlier, astronomers discovered the planet Neptune fewer than 200 years ago in 1846, when they were finally able to see it with a more powerful telescope. Astronomers continued building different types of and more powerful telescopes, which led to even better understanding of space and more questions about it, too. Discovering more objects similar in size to Pluto led scientists to ask again, how should Pluto be classified? With more information available, astronomers came up with a brand new answer to that question. Today, telescopes that astronomers use are usually located in areas far away from cities. Where there are cities, there's also a lot of light. And where there is a lot of light on Earth, it's harder to see the light of the stars. Light made by humans that hinders or blocks our view of the stars is called light pollution. Besides building telescopes far away from light pollution, astronomers also like to build telescopes on high mountains. You might think it's also the astronomers, it's so that astronomers can get closer to the stars, but it's not really that much closer. An observatory is a building designed especially for observing stars, planets, and other space objects. Placing an observatory high on a mountain allows astronomers to get above much of Earth's atmosphere. And as the Earth's atmosphere thins out in higher places, astronomers can more clearly look at the light of the stars. A more powerful telescope was built for the Lowell Observatory in Arizona for the purpose of finding Pluto. Astronomers thought that Pluto existed before they ever saw it. There appeared to be something in space beyond Uranus and Neptune that was exerting a strong gravitational pull on these planets. Astronomers searched for 25 years before they finally discovered Pluto. But there's another way that scientists are now able to place telescopes even higher than the mountain telescopes. Telescopes are launched into space. That's right. Scientists now use rockets to escape Earth's surface gravity. The power of rockets enables spacecraft to launch telescopes into space. Once beyond Earth's atmosphere, the telescopes can study the universe more clearly and closely than ever before. Some spacecraft are held in orbit around Earth by its gravity. Other spacecraft have ventured beyond the reach of Earth's gravity to explore other parts of the solar system. Telescopes and cameras aboard the space probes Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 have spent the last many years gathering information about Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and the outermost reaches of the solar system. telescopes that are launched into space are literally out of this world, and they are able to take pictures of the universe that are also out of this world. The Hubble Space Telescope is the most famous telescope ever to be launched into space. It was carried into orbit by a space shuttle in 1990, and it now orbits about 350 miles above the surface of Earth. Because there's very little light pollution in orbit, and because Earth's atmosphere does not get in the way and cause distortion, this powerful telescope helps scientists see deeper into the universe than ever before. The Hubble Space Telescope has provided scientists with new information and fantastic pictures about how our own solar system, distant stars, faraway galaxies, and other celestial bodies and occurrences. New discoveries in scientists in science, such as the telescope, always lead to new questions. For most of human history, many of the questions and theories people had about space came from simply gazing up at the night sky. People could look at the moon and the planets and the stars, but these celestial bodies were completely beyond reach. Once humans invented a way to fly in airplanes, which was only a little more than 100 years ago, the question soon became, can we fly beyond Earth's atmosphere, all the way out into space? The exciting answer to that question was a very loud yes. In 1957, a group of countries, then called the Soviet Union, which included Russia, sent the first satellite made by humans into space. The satellite was called Sputnik 1, and it was an aluminum sphere that was only about the size of a beach ball. This small artificial satellite began a whole new revolution in space exploration. Can you guess what scientists' next question was? It was, if we can send a satellite into space, can we also send a living being into space? A month later, Russia sent a dog named Laika into space. Laika was the first living being ever to go into space. After Laika's mission, several more dogs were successfully sent into space. Can you guess what the next question was? Right? If we can send a dog into space, can we send a human into space? And in 1961, the Soviets again answered this question with a resounding, enthusiastic yes. The first human being to go into space was Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin aboard the vessel Vostok 1. Cosmonaut Yuri orbited the globe in Vostok 1 for 108 minutes before he returned to Earth. This was a new triumph, not only for Russia and the Soviet Union, but for all humans. It was a new triumph, but scientists asked a new question. If we can send a human being into space, can we also send one to land on the moon? What do you think the answer was? A triumphant yes. And in 1969, the United States sent 3 astronauts into space. Neil Armstrong, sorry, Michael Collins, and Buzz Aldrin. These astronauts traveled to the moon in a spacecraft called Apollo 11, which had 3 sections. The lunar module or section of the Apollo 11 was named the Eagle, and it landed on the moon with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin aboard. Meanwhile, astronaut Michael Collins orbited the moon in the Apollo 11 command module, which was called the Columbia, and a third service module provided power, oxygen, and water. On July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong became the first human being ever to walk on the moon. Soon after his feet, which were inside his spacesuit, touched the surface, Neil Armstrong spoke these famous words. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Soon after Armstrong said these famous words, Buzz Aldrin joined him to walk on the surface where they bounced and hopped to get around because of the moon's low gravity. The astronauts had to plan their movement 6 or 7 steps ahead because movement on the moon is different from movement on Earth. They had also discovered that the fine moon soil was quite slippery. Together, Armstrong and Aldrin collected about 48 pounds of moon rocks and brought them back to Earth to be studied. They took many photographs and performed experiments to learn about the moon. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin rejoined pilot Michael Collins aboard Apollo 11's Columbia, where they lived while in space, and they all returned safely to Earth. Thanks to Earth's gravity, the Columbia came back through Earth's atmosphere and splashed down in the Pacific Ocean. There are lots of pictures of the Columbia in magazines and on the internet. And someday, if you ever visit Washington, D.C., you can see the Columbia at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, the actual Columbia. In the past, spacecraft like the Apollo 11 were only able to fly into space and back one at a time. They were not reusable. But with advances in technology, reusable spacecraft have been developed. Reusing the space shuttles has saved time, money, and valuable resources. Scientists continue to explore space in the future, and we will continue to better understand both space and the universe. As we continue to learn more, you can be sure there will be new questions that will be asked. Maybe you'll be asking and even answering some of them. So, can you describe Aldrin's and Armstrong's time on the moon? What were some of the things that they did and learned while they were there? They practiced walking, they collected rock samples, took pictures, performed experiments. They learned that the soil on the moon is fine and slippery. They brought back rocks that could be studied, and they learned about the effects of gravity. Can you describe the 3 modules of Apollo 11 and the purpose of each? The service module on the top carried power, oxygen, and water. The command module in the middle was called Columbia. It was the main part of the spacecraft where the astronauts lived and traveled. The lunar module on the bottom was called the Eagle, and it separated from Columbia to land on the moon. From its launch until its return to Earth, what effects did gravity have on Apollo 11 and the astronauts? Well, Apollo 11 needed powerful rockets to be launched in the opposite direction of Earth's gravitational pull. While on the moon, the astronauts had to learn to move with less gravity, the gravity mostly of the moon, and Apollo 11 was able to return to Earth with the help of Earth's gravity, pulled right in. What factors are important to consider when choosing the site of an observatory? Being high on a mountain reduces the amount of distortion from Earth's atmosphere. Being far away from light pollution and cities provides darker skies. Identify and describe some of the different kinds of spacecraft and tools that scientists use to explore and study space. Well, a probe is an unmanned spacecraft that takes pictures and gathers information and can travel far out into the solar system. A space shuttle is a winged, manned, reusable spacecraft that carries astronauts and equipment. The Hubble Space Telescope, orbits Earth and can gather information and images from far out in space. Observatories are located in dark, high places on Earth and use telescopes to study space. What is unique about a space shuttle? Well, space shuttles are reusable spacecraft. And what do you think Copernicus might think about the discoveries that have been made about space since his time? I think he'd be amazed, in wonder, extremely gratified and pleased.